Okay, in this screencast, we are going to revisit the revision techniques that we worked with when we did our narrative. Um, and this is titled Formal Essay Revision, but these revision techniques work with any type of writing. All right, so in the other screencast, you did day one. Today, we are on to day two. So we have two more revision techniques to work with today. Okay, so I'm going to just tell you that as you begin, I want you to make both sets of markings. So there are two techniques you're working with today, but you can make your markings for both techniques back to back, and then you can go back and do your evaluation of those two things together. And I think that'll really save you time because you'll find that looking at them together will give you better ideas on how you can combine sentences and how you can maybe change and make your verbs better. All right, so the first one has to do with using specific verbs. Now, be verbs are helping verbs. There are a whole lot more than the ones I have listed here. But as, is, are, was, were, be, being, been, have, has, had, could, would, should, all of these words are helping verbs. And sometimes there's a better way to say something, a more direct, a clearer way and a more interesting way. Even if it's formal writing, you can be creative in the way that you use your words. So here's your challenge. You're going to go through your draft. You're going to circle all the be verbs that you can find, all the helping verbs. Now, if you're not used to looking for them, this might take you a little bit of time. Once you've gone through this revision strategy once or twice and been annoyed by how long it takes you to find your be verbs, the next time you sit down to write, you're going to be thinking about that and you're going to start writing with fewer be verbs and your writing is strengthened immediately. Okay, so you're going to count those circles and challenge yourself to replace at least half of them. Okay, now this requires you to evaluate. Do you want to change them? Why is it there? Can you say it in a different way? So you can replace those words with a more specific or a more vivid verb. You can change passive voice to active voice. I have a great example of this on the next slide. A lot of times we use had when we don't even need a had. We can combine with another sentence, take that sentence that has that boring be verb and turn it into a phrase and combine that to another sentence. Or you could just simply use a different sentence type. All right, so for example, my first example, the Great Depression was a difficult time for everyone in the United States. Unemployment was high and people could not pay rents and provide food for their families. So if you notice in those two sentences, I have three helping verbs, three be verbs. Okay, so if I'm going to revise and just improve those verbs, have a look at what I did. With high unemployment rates during the Great Depression, many people in the United States faced difficult times as they could not pay rents or provide food for their families. Now, what I did was I combined the ideas into one sentence, and then I used more specific verbs. Notice the could is still here. We're not asking you to remove every single helping verb or every single be verb in your draft, but instead to evaluate where you can get rid of them and how you can make your writing more interesting. Notice that the combination of the sentences really does help to make the connections between those ideas stronger. All right, the second example here is a passive voice. I see this all the time. This one's so easy to get rid of. The stock market crash of 1929 had created a difficult situation for many. This is passive voice. Notice in my revision, you don't even need the had. All I did was delete it. Created. The stock market crash created a difficult situation. Be direct. Get rid of those hads. If you have hads in there, you can probably delete them all. Now, that's a bold statement to make, and that might not be true. But if it's next to another past tense verb like this, you've probably just used a had you don't need. That's really unsophisticated and it really interrupts a reader when they're trying to really understand your argument that you're making in your paper. All right, our second technique. So you're going to do these two markings back to back and then evaluate all at once, okay? So avoiding fragments and run-ons. Again, this is just a technique that sends you back into your draft. It's just visual. It is not foolproof. Okay, it's not going to ensure that you find every fragment and every run-on in your draft, but it does give you clues. Okay, so you're going to underline every other sentence in a different color. If you're on a computer like in Google Classroom or in a Google Doc, you could use the highlighting tool. I find this is actually faster. If these techniques are actually faster if you print your draft and get out some colored markers. But you're going to underline every other sentence in a different color. Red, blue, red, blue, red, blue, for example. Now you're going to look for extra long lines and evaluate to see, is that a run-on sentence Maybe it's not. Maybe it's a beautifully combined, really complicated sentence. Is it clear? If it's really long, maybe it does need to be looked at for clarity anyway. Look for short lines and evaluate these as they might be fragments. Okay, so if you have something really, really short, maybe you've written short sentences on purpose for effect. Or maybe you've got a phrase that you've not connected. Maybe all you have to do with that sentence that's got a short line is delete that period, put a comma, and connect it to the sentence after it. Make it an introductory phrase. Sometimes these are really, really easy to fix. Now, you're looking for repeated patterns as well, such as like 3 or more sentences of the same length back to back, because maybe there are simple ideas that you could combine and make more solid. Again, this is not foolproof. It's just a way to get you to re-enter your draft and think about places that you might be able to make improvements. Okay? All right, so 2 techniques for today. Circle the be verbs, underline every other sentence in a different color, and then do that evaluation piece all together. That way you can do this more quickly and more solidly. And next time you write, think about those be verbs and try not to write with them to begin with.